Beginning poker players make a lot of mistakes. And here we have a few of them, but they're not pretty. Let's start with a hand that is very typical for live low-stakes poker games. We have ace-king under the gun, we make it 5x, and we still manage to pick up 1, 2, 3, and 4 callers. So 5 ways to a flop of 9-4 deuce with a flush draw, and here I see what I see all the time in these games. Our hero goes for a c-bet with ace-high. I absolutely don't understand why you would do that. Yes, you have 2 overs and the backdoor flush draw with a kicker, but come on, this is not really a great hand to go for a c-bet. However, we do it and we get called by the small blind and by the big blind. Now the king comes, which is a bit bittersweet, I would say, because now we improve. However, the small blind now donks for about third pot. The big blind calls, and I guess we have to call now because we've made top pair, top kicker. So it would be a bit silly to fold now. However, I'm already not feeling great at this point. But still, I agree with Hero to call in this situation. And now on the river, the deuce pairs and the flush bricks, and the small blind now leads out for half pot. The big blind gets out of the way. And I guess you could say we have top pair, top kicker, and the flush missed. However, at these stakes, 1-3 in a 5-way pot that it was on the flop, I just don't think that we will see a lot of missed flush draws here. And we just won't. It will be a value hand. And we don't beat any value. I don't think you would do that with, well, maybe King Queen, I would have said, but King Queen of what? Of diamonds? Well, he can't have that because we have the King of Diamonds. So I think this is absolutely a fold here. Our hero looked him up and got shown the bad news. Full house, 4 deuce. Yep, that's live low stakes poker for you. And because we like the last hand so much, here is a similar one: under the gun limbs, UTG +1 limbs, low jack limbs, hijack limbs, cutoff limbs. Our hero has ace queen off on the button, makes it 20. I would probably have gone 25 or 30, but 20 is okay. And yay, result, the small blind has folded. But the bad news is big blind calls, UTG calls, UTG +1 calls, low jack calls, hijack calls, and cutoff calls. So we go to this flop 7 ways. Ace 9-6, not a bad flop for our hand. It checks to us, and I would absolutely check behind this one here. Yes, we have top pair, second kicker. However, there are so many hands that beat us, plus so many draws there. We will not be able to get to showdown if we bet on more than one street here, and even that might not be good. We might get raised by a draw here, and then we don't know where we stand, so I would absolutely check this one back. However, our hero goes tiny, 25 into 141. We do manage to get a few folds. However, now cutoff raises to 75. Already alarm bells start ringing. I mean, as I said, I would not even have c-bet this flop, but I would probably fold now. Now, I can't fold hero too much for calling here, if you were to do so, just because everyone else folded, and maybe cutoff is pushing some buttons, although I don't think that in a 1-2 game that's really going to happen a lot here. So I think we are already beat, and now our hero does what I think is the worst thing. He chooses the option of going all in, thus isolating himself against the top of cutoff's range. I don't think we ever get anything worse to fold. If we ever did that with ace jack, ace 10, which I don't think he would, but if he did, then he might fold now, and we definitely won't fold out 2 pair or a set. And yes, we will fold our draws, but yeah, we would be ahead against them anyway. So here we go all in, we get called. board breaks and we lose to 9-6 suited, which I'm not surprised about at all. I would have played this super passively here, just check behind on the flop and then possibly called one bet on the turn, and probably, to be honest, not even a river bet, and I would have lost less in a 7-way pot. Please don't see bet hands that are not the nuts, basically. And even with the nuts, maybe you should slow play unless they're very vulnerable. But other than that, I would never advocate to c-bet anything in a c-bet in a 7-way pot. This next hand is a tricky one and was played at 5-10. Our hero makes it 25 with pocket kings under the gun. I would probably have gone a little bit bigger, but it's fine. This is the GTO size, all good with it. But then we get called by 4 players, which is not great, but the flop is amazing. King 7 deuce with 2 hearts. And now our hero does something that I really like, and it is GTO approved. In a multi-way pot, if you c-bet, you c-bet small. And this is a board that I would definitely c-bet with this hand because we have the nuts, but we have vulnerable nuts. So yes, exploitatively, we might be able to go bigger than what Hero did. Hero went just under a third pot, but I do like this. And you might say, why? Because there is a flush draw on the board. You have a vulnerable hand. And the answer is yes. However, even if you bet pot here, you will not really accomplish much, because if you bet really big, yes, you will price out flush draws, but you don't actually want flush draws to fold. And if you're lucky, you will get raised by a flush draw here, and that's exactly what we want. We want other players to put in a lot of money with inferior hands, and you can't do that if you go really big. So, and this is exactly what happens. Hijack now raises, everyone else gets out of the way, and now we have the decision to make. We can either call or go all in, or just raise a bit smaller, and obviously we could fold, but we won't fold the nuts here. So the question is, do we want to raise or call? And I would just keep his bluffs in. Yes, I know we have a vulnerable hand, but even if the flush comes in on the turn, we still have a draw to a full house. So here I think the right play is to call, and that's exactly what our hero did. A brick on the turn, hero checks to the aggressor, and now hijack bets just under half pot. And I think this is now where hero made a mistake. Yes, you could argue that you call again, keep his bluffs in, but at this point I think I would just go all in, simply because if he has a hand like pocket sevens or pocket deuces, now is the time to get all his money, because he will definitely call. And if he has a flush draw, yes, I know I said earlier that it's good to keep the flush draw in, but now I just think it's better to just go all in to deny his equity. We have made quite a bit of money in this pot, and let's allow him the chance to make the mistake by calling off with a weaker hand. However, our hero just calls here, and the river brings the dreaded flush. We check, and now hijack goes 400, leaving 225 behind. This is a very, very tricky spot now, because if he had gone all in, I would say this is a clear fold now. I would puke, but still fold. But this just looks like he might do this still with pocket deuces or pocket sevens. So I'm very torn between calling and folding, but because it is a 5-10, maybe I would lean towards calling as well here. This is what hero does, but of course it is 7-8 of hearts, which was actually surprising to see that villain raised the flop with a pair and the flush draw in a 5-way pot, and then also bet the turn, but he got there in the end and he won a big pot. Are you still with me? Let's look at 3 more hands. This hand is another example of terrible beginner play, and I was guilty of doing something like this when I first started out, and I thought I'm better than everyone else at my table, and I felt overconfident. So we have a couple of limpers here, and hero has 7-6 offsuit on the button. This is a hand that should hit the muck straight away, no matter what, even in an unopened pot. However, our hero isolates here to 20, which I think is a big mistake. My rule of thumb for isolating limpers is the following. If there is one limper in front of me, I just ignore him and I will raise my normal range. However, if there are 2 or more limpers, then I will only isolate with hands that I would open in early position. And 7-6 offsuit ain't one of them. And not only that, but the mistake gets compounded when the initial limper now raises to 60. If that happens, at this point I would fold a hand like ace jack. I would even probably fold a hand like ace queen here, but not our hero. Our hero calls with 7-6 offsuit here. And he gets rewarded by the looks of it. King 7-6. Now, the original raiser, or limp raiser I should say, makes it 50 into 127. We call. I think this is fine here. If he has aces, if he has ace king, we could of course raise already and get it in, but I'm okay with just calling here. The 4 is pretty much a brick. He now goes all in, and now our hero asked here what to do. Actually, the hero was afraid that he might lose here. However, I mean, if you get to this spot here, even if it's a 2x shove here, I don't see how you could fold, because he could easily have aces, he could have ace king. I don't even know if he would shove with pocket kings here, and if he does, I mean, now that you have 2 pair here in a 3-bet pot, you have to call, and this is what our hero did as well. And the other player indeed had ace king, so our hero won this massive pot. However, I still think it was a mistake after mistake that was made here by our hero, and I would absolutely not advocate of playing a hand like this ever, no matter what the action is. This one here is another preflop mistake, albeit a smaller one. UTG +1 raises to 15, and we are on the button with ace jack offsuit. Now I think this hand should just go into the muck. GTO agrees with me here. If the raise had been from a later position, then I could argue to call, or probably, to be fair, even raise here, but I don't like the call. If anything, I would raise here, but I would probably just fold this one. But hero calls and big blind calls as well. Now we have a gut shot here. The original raiser bets a 3rd pot. I think at this stage we have to call here for a 3rd pot. There is nothing else we can do. But now the big blind raises us, and hero said that big blind was a tank. I mean, I put a question mark behind it because he started the hand quite short, so I'm not really sure about that. But he raises now under the gun +1, calls, and this is annoying now, but after we already called the 15 and we have a gut shot and we're still very deep against under the gun +1, yeah, I guess we have to call here, but I'm not loving it. But I am loving the turn card. It gives us the nuts, and big blind now checks. Now under the gun +1 bets out again, and at this point I would just raise and try to get my money in. We have the nuts here. Someone could have a set here or 2 pair. I mean, big blind, if he raised, he might well have 2 pair or a set there. And under the gun +1, after he called the raise on the flop and now leads out or bets again on the turn, I think think both players seem to have something. I would just raise here, but our hero just calls, but then the big blind does the work for him. He goes all in, under the gun +1 calls, and now finally hero goes all in, which I agree with, and he gets called. And yeah, we win it in the end against 2 pair and a set. This last hand of the day features a very common post-flop mistake. So we open ace queen off in the hijack, get called by the button. So this is a heads up pot. And now the flop comes ace 9 8, and our hero bets pot here with top pair good kicker. And this is a big mistake in GTO, but I see it all the time. People just think I raised pre-flop, there's an ace high flop, I should just c-bet here and I have a vulnerable hand, and so I c-bet big. But if you look at the solution in the solver, this is basically a range check here. So whatever your hand, if you have pocket aces here, if you have pocket nines, whatever, you should just check and then go for a check raise with a hand like this, but not bet. Anyway, in this case we get called, and then the jack on the turn could improve him, doesn't improve our range much, but we now go for 2/3, which again I think is a bit optimistic, especially after villain already called that big flop bet. So we get called again, and now there is the king on the river. The flush draw bricks, and our hero now finally finds a check here. But now the button goes all in, and our hero asked whether he should call here. I think he shouldn't. The button called 2 big bets here, and now went for a river bet. Yes, of course you could have a misdraw, but I think the board looks way too dangerous, and all we have is a bluff catcher. And especially in small stakes games, when an opponent takes this sort of a line, I don't think we will see a lot of bluffs. So I'm okay with a fold here on the river. However, I think here some pot controlling would have been in order on the flop, and then again on the turn possibly just check such a flop when you're out of position in a heads up pot.